everyone, I'm Crystal Nettles and this is Turning the Verge. My guest today is award-winning photographer Kurt Weston, whose work can currently be seen at the California Museum of Photography in Riverside in Sight Unseen.
Thank you.
So
Thank you,
Sight
Crystal.
Unseen, what is this showing about?
It's amazing. The show is actually featuring the work of 12 blind and visually impaired photographers from all around the world. It's the first show that actually incorporates this many photographers on such a wide scale, and the work is very inspirational and amazing.
So tell me something about some of your pieces that are going to be on display.
The show has a lot of work that I call my Blind Vision series, which are images that are related to my own personal vision loss. So it deals with the psychological, emotional, and physical stress of that vision loss. I also have a number of pieces that I had created for my Masters of Fine Arts project that dealt with images of senior citizens. I became interested in that type of work primarily because of my interest in longevity and a long lifespan, which I personally didn't think I would have the ability to live because I am living with HIV/AIDS, which actually was one of the things that caused my vision loss due to CMV retinitis, which is an AIDS opportunistic infection. So I actually became very fascinated with the concept of aging and living a long lifespan. And so I did this wonderful project where I actually photographed senior citizens and incorporated them into this body of work, which I call Hearts of a Silent Age. I also, as part of my process, started not only photographing subjects with a camera, but also using a flatbed computer scanner. So then after I would photograph my subject and get to know them a little bit, have a nice little dialogue with them while I was photographing them, I would ask them if they would be willing to put their face down on a computer scanner, and then I would just scan their face, which was it's kind of a very unique and amazing effect, because all the parts of the skin, the flesh that actually touch the glass of the scanner become very sharp and in focus, and almost to an almost unreal, heightened reality, something that I like to define as a super realism. And then it has a very short depth of field, so everything that goes away from the glass of the scanner starts having a ghostly, sort of fuzzy, blurred out effect. So it's this really unique combination of the flesh that's touching the scanner and very sharp and in focus, and then this sort of like metaphysical spirit effect that kind of also integrates with that, which I think is kind of telling, because I know a lot of the people I photographed for the project were in their 90s. I even had some subjects that were reaching 100 years old. And we're at that time of life, you're sort of in a window between the physical and the spiritual. You're on that borderline where the physical body is breaking down. Eventually our mortality catches up with us. If we all live to a certain age, we all have to deal with that reality.
And a lot of your work, I've noticed, kind of has some spiritual overtones. Has any of it caused controversy?
I think it can, if you take it. It depends on how you look at it. The thing I think is very interesting is that a lot of artists don't really broach these concepts, and a lot of our culture even turns away from the whole concept of mortality. If you look at commercial television, what you see is our commercial society very much focused on youth and beauty and this almost super idealized concept of those things. I mean, we have, in our society, we have people who are willing to physically go through surgery to do a cosmetic change on how they appear with plastic surgery and Botox injections and all these things. And to me, that's almost surreal. The fact that people would be willing to alter their bodies through surgery even to achieve some sort of superficial status of beauty that is being projected to them through the media. I find that my work is dealing with, it might be harsh, but a reality that nonetheless is very part of our living. That, again, all of us will, if we live a certain number of years, will age. Mm. And it doesn't matter how many surgeries a person might have or Botox injections. The body breaks down, the body ages. And I think to show it in a meaningful way so that it has some depth to it and maybe helps to open up someone's perception of what it is like to live in that reality, then I think that's one of the whole purposes of art. I mean, art is a wonderful way to relate concepts to people and to open up perspectives about different ways of living, types of culture that we have. Art's a wonderful vehicle for doing that, and that's what I'm trying to do in my art.
So, do you contemplate your own mortality?
Oh yeah, I mean, obviously, living with AIDS, I've had to. I actually came into my AIDS diagnosis at the very early part of the AIDS epidemic, when there wasn't a lot of good treatments for HIV/AIDS, and I witnessed many of my friends dying really horrible, painful deaths in the hospital. I can't tell you how many people I went to visit during those years that just died really horrible, painful deaths. Mm. Of course, now the treatments for HIV/AIDS have really improved, although a lot of the medications have a lot of bad side effects, and a lot of people now are actually experiencing some very bad side effects of long-term HIV drug therapy. So I don't know, because of the fact that because I have to deal with the reality of the disease process and the side effects of the medication, which long-term use in itself can shorten one's lifespan. I deal with the concept of mortality and loss on a daily basis. And also it's a constant reminder with my vision, the fact that I lost my vision due to an AIDS-related condition called CMV retinitis. Mm-hmm. That also it reminds me every day that I wake up that I don't have the vision I used to. That I'm dealing with this disease.
And when you lost your vision, was that something that was a gradual process, or did you wake up one day and it was gone?
No, it's actually a very slow process. I didn't even realize that it was happening until it was actually really strange. I went to go see the rock opera Tommy, mm-hmm. and I don't know if your viewers know what Tommy's all about, but Tommy is a rock opera about a deaf, dumb, and blind boy. And I was watching the rock opera at the Auditorium Theater in Chicago, and I noticed that I couldn't see on my peripheral vision while I was watching the show. I couldn't see the person on the left-hand side of me, but I could see the person on the right-hand side of me. And I thought, well, that's weird. How come I can see this person, but I can't see that person? And that's when I realized something was happening to my vision. I mean, at this point, I already knew that I had AIDS, mm-hmm. but I didn't realize that it could also rob me of my vision. I went to see my doctor, and then he referred me to an ophthalmologist, and they determined that I did have CMV retinitis, which was one of the AIDS opportunistic infections. I had to go through a lot of IV intravenous therapy, mm-hmm. with really strong drugs to try to slow down the process of that virus. and I was on those intravenous drugs for several years until finally those drugs failed. And then I started losing a lot of vision. So now I'm totally blind in my left eye, and I have only limited peripheral vision with no central vision in my right eye due to this condition. And so now I'm looking at you, and I don't see
what do you see?
I don't see your face. I mean, I see like flesh tone, but I don't see your eyes or your nose or your mouth. So I can't really distinguish one person from another. Everything is a blur. It's very out of focus. And then I also see these like speckly, like webby type things that slosh in front of my vision called floaters. And that's also as a result of this CMV retinitis condition that I have. So I also did another body of work that is called my blind vision series. And in a lot of those images, you see my hand like trying to push away this obstruction that's within the field of view between me and the viewer. And it's like I'm sort of gesturing, like wanting to wipe away these obstructions that are actually present in my own vision.
And we actually have a sample of some of that. Can you tell the viewers what they're seeing right now?
Well, in the one image, peering through the darkness, you actually do see that. You see my face very blurred and out of focus. And I have some sort of a visual device in my eye. It's actually a jeweler's loupe, which is like a magnification device that I use to see things close up. And then you see all this obstruction on the glass, which I'm actually trying to wipe away. And then in another image called Losing the Light, which was actually featured at a show at the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. Again, you see my hand trying to push away or wipe away these fragments and obstructions that are present in the visual field. So that work has actually garnered a lot of interest. I think it helps to inform the sighted viewer what it might be like to experience that level of vision loss and impairment. And I think, again, it's that whole thing of trying to incorporate something, within my own life experience to represent it visually so that it can inform the viewer about something that they might not have any knowledge of. So
how do you, if you cannot see anything but kind of blurred colors, so to speak, how do you compose an image? When
I lost most of my vision, I didn't think I'd be able to photograph again. And then after living here for a while in Orange County, I went to the Braille Institute, and I learned how to use low vision devices. And I also went to a school up in Los Angeles called the Foundation for the Junior Blind. And I learned adaptive computer technology. So the combination of using low vision devices, which are special magnifiers and monoculars and video magnifiers, and then adaptive computer software where I can actually zoom in to images on my computer screen. And I use very large monitors, like 30-inch monitors. And then I can also utilize the zoom technology, which lets me to go directly, like really blow up stuff big. When I get to that level, then I can actually start seeing detail, things that I can't see in my everyday life, I can actually see on the computer screen.
Oh, wow.
So by utilizing all this stuff, I can actually still photograph.
Oh, wow. And you were a photographer before you lost your vision, correct?
Correct. I was, for many years, a fashion photographer in Chicago. I worked for a company called Pivot Point International, which was an international company. We photographed primarily glamour type photographs, mostly of hair and makeup. And it was great. I worked in a studio. I had clothing designers, makeup artists, hairstylists working with me, and some really amazing models. I got to travel to Europe and photograph with wonderful people and amazing models in Europe. My images were starting to appear in publications that were published throughout the world, And I was really kind of riding at the top of my career when the AIDS thing happened, and I ended up in the hospital with pneumonia. I ended up working actually for 2 more years after my initial diagnoses, but then on my 3rd case of pneumonia, I realized that I couldn't continue to work, so I went out on disability, and it was then that I actually started experiencing my vision loss.
Oh, wow. And what was the reaction like when your peers learned that you had AIDS?
My own personal circle of friends were very supportive, as well as my family. I think my family was just, though, really freaked out, because when I first ended up in the hospital with the pneumonia, I was told later that the doctor told my parents that I probably would die in the hospital, that I probably would not survive my hospital stay, but miraculously I did. And considering that I was there at the very early stages of the epidemic, and that it's now 2009 and I'm still surviving with the disease, I think it is really quite a miracle.
And what year were you diagnosed?
I was actually diagnosed full-blown in 1991, but it takes a long time to go from being HIV positive to actually having full-blown AIDS. Mm-hmm. It's usually a 10-year process between the time you're infected with HIV and the time it actually turns into a full-blown AIDS diagnosis. My doctor believes I was probably infected in 1980, which would make sense based on my lifestyle at the time and what I was doing, engaging in some rather risky behaviors. But I think, and at that time, we still didn't know there was an HIV virus. Mm-hmm. The CDC, the Center for Disease, did not announce to the American public that there was an HIV virus until 1985. So I was infected with HIV long before the announcement of HIV even became public.
Oh, wow. And what kind of treatments were available back then? I know you kind of attribute kind of your health today to the different medicines you've been able to take. But what was treatment like back in the 80s and the 90s? It
was not very good. In fact, many people died, and then finally AZT, which was the first actual medication that was approved by the FDA for the treatment of HIV/AIDS, was released. And it was a very toxic medication, and a lot of people got terrible side effects from taking it. And when they first started using the drug, they prescribed it in way too high of a dose, so that people became very anemic and ended up dying as a result of just taking the drug. Mm-hmm. Later, they realized that they were giving too high a dose, and they brought the dosing down, but it still has a tremendous amount of side effects. Currently, there are about 24 medications that are approved by the FDA for the treatment of HIV and AIDS, but most of them still have a lot of side effects. And of course, there is no cure. There's no morning after pill, and people living with HIV and AIDS have to take these medications on a daily basis, several times a day, and deal with the side effects, which after long-term use can be very debilitating, even though they are life-saving.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sure most people, you hear HIV, you hear AIDS, you know what it is, but some people might not know exactly what it entails. Can you describe what specifically AIDS is, what HIV is, what it does?
Sure. HIV is a virus that attacks a certain cell of your immune system called a T cell, or some people call it a CD4 cell. And the CD4 or T cell is basically the general of your immune system. It directs all the other immune cells, because we have so many different types of immune cells that are operating in our body that are attacking the foreign invaders, the bacteria and viruses that sort of get into our systems. But the CD4 or T cell actually is sort of the general of the army that tells all these immune cells what to attack, what the foreign invader is. A person living with HIV and AIDS basically loses the ability to distinguish and fight those foreign invaders. And so we get sick with what is called opportunistic infections. The viruses and bacteria and parasites that might exist in the environment or that are already in our bodies, we lose the ability to fight those, and that's what starts to kill people living with AIDS. They get the pneumonias, the lesions, the viruses that destroy what destroyed my vision, basically. There are so many opportunistic infections, and people really who are at that level of full-blown AIDS really die very painful and horrible deaths. We're seeing a lot less of that now because the medications have gotten so much better for the treatment of HIV/AIDS. But can you believe that here in 2009, we're now seeing a rise in the number of people being infected here in the United States and even here in Orange County?
Do people know what that's attributed to, or have there been studies done as to why it's suddenly
I think
up
it's
again?
because our nation has become pretty lax in terms of an AIDS prevention message. I know I go out to high schools and colleges and universities to talk to young people about what it's like living with this disease and how horrible it can be. And I'm really surprised a lot of times at how much naivety there still is out there regarding how people get HIV and AIDS. I actually had a girl ask me in one of my classes that I was speaking to if she could get HIV/AIDS from using a public restroom, which was shocking to me considering the virus. We've been knowing about this virus now for over 20 years, and still people have a lot of misconceptions about it. The latest epidemiological data here in Orange County shows that the largest percentage of the population that's being infected are women and people of color. They're actually walking into our free clinic on 17th Street in Santa Ana with full-blown AIDS, not even knowing that they were HIV positive. So the statistics are really alarming, and I think we really have to, as a community, really bring out the AIDS prevention messages and let people know again and again what it is, how this disease is spread, that there is no cure, it's not going away, and it's not something you want to live with.
I remember when I was in high school, they showed us some sort of video and kind of in layman's terms what you were describing and how your body can't really tell the difference on what's in it. These little, guys dressed up in the costumes, and that was pretty much it. Like, that and sex education, everything in that scope was never really talked about, and it was one of those things where people were almost afraid to talk about it. People, were afraid of what to do if they met someone with AIDS, and it's kind of, it's sad that there's so many misconceptions.
Oh, sure.
Do you deal with a lot of misconceptions?
Yeah, like I said, there's still, unfortunately, in this day and age, a lot of people who are still paranoid and fearful of something that they don't need to be about. I mean, you can't get AIDS from touching somebody who has it or breathing the air that they're breathing. I mean, you can't even transmit it through saliva. But because it's a very weak virus, when it gets exposed to oxygen, it basically dies. So it's a very weak virus. Sexual transmission, IV drug use, these are the main sources of infection. And, I think we have to be realistic about it. I mean, we have to tell people about how to have safer sex, to stay away from using IV drugs or using clean needles. I mean, but these are unfortunately still in our society taboo subjects, and people just don't want to deal with them. I think what I do, actually going out and speaking to young people and telling them directly what it's like to go through these opportunistic infections, what it's like to live with this disease, and that I'm very fortunate that I was able to continue to live and work at my passion and my love, which was my photography. In fact, I was very proud of the fact one of my life dreams was to actually go back and get my Master's of Fine Arts degree, which is something that I wanted to accomplish almost right after I got my bachelor's in arts. But of course the AIDS thing happened, and I really couldn't deal with that. But in 2005, I actually went back to school and got my Master's of Fine Arts at Cal State Fullerton.
And my alma mater.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Straight A's. I got straight
Wow.
A's, and I was very, very proud of my accomplishments and my ability to get through the program, although it was quite challenging. But it was great because I was able to fulfill a life stream, and I studied with some amazing professors who really pushed the conceptual envelope and got my work to where I think it is today. And I'm very grateful for the opportunity to have done that. Of course, now I'm writing on this great show at the California Museum of Photography, which is now, I heard, quite possibly going to be an international show. There's talk of the show traveling all around the world because it's garnered so much interest while it's at the California Museum of Photography. The show actually will be running until August of 2009.
August 29th, correct?
Yes.
So yeah, you have all summer to go. And I would hope it'd go international, since it's called International Photography by blind artists. And where else have people seen your work? What other exhibits have you been a part of?
I've actually had work at the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. I've actually was in a show there called Transformations, which featured several of my pieces, and actually one of them called Losing the Light was featured on the postcard that advertised the show, which was really exciting for me. I've also had some video work featured at the Kennedy Center because I also do video art. And then I've been in shows basically all over the United States. I like to be involved with shows that also represent the work of other disabled artists. I even started a show here in Southern California with the help of the Southern California College of Optometry. It's called the Shared Vision Show, and it's a show that runs for an entire year. It's now going into its 5th year, and it shows the work of visually impaired artists, not only photographers, but painters, sculptors, ceramic artists, glass artists, all visually impaired and blind. It's free to the public at the Southern California College of Optometry, and the next year's show will be opening up in September of 2009, and that show will stay up for an entire year. So anybody can go during the year and see it, and it's totally free.
That's amazing. I'm like so untalented just with all of my senses. I couldn't even imagine being that talented and not having something, so...
Well, your talent is being a moderator.
My talent is talking.
Yes,
no,
exactly. That's good.
No, I would love to do art. If someone was like me or someone had that passion, they wanted to get involved, how would you recommend they start?
Well, I think that the first thing to do is to realize the gift of being an artist. And to me, it's just so wonderful being a creator instead of just a consumer, So it's like, I really enjoy creating images that mean something. I did do stuff like for fashion, which was more commercial work, and now I'm doing more of an art photography, which deals with, it's very concept rich, dealing with making people think, making people feel, maybe opening up their perception and perspective on things. That's what I really love to do. It's sort of like opening up the mind to other ways of seeing the world and other perspectives. So I think first you have to have an inspiration to be an artist, and then I think you have to search out those possibilities, which today, in our society today with the internet, is so magnificent. The Google searches and things like that, you can type in all kinds of opportunities, do a Google search on any type of art that you're involved with, or any type of group that you're artistic group that you're involved with, and it's amazing what pops up in terms of exhibition calls for entries, contests, all kinds of things. So it's like even in the visually impaired community, I've been involved with shows like the National Exhibits for Blind Artists, which has been featured at the Philadelphia Museum of Art. There was a show I was in called Blind at the Museum, which was sponsored by the Berkeley Art Museum. So there's all of these things that exist out there. It's just connecting to them, doing the work, and then submitting your work so that possibly you can get the work into those shows.
And you mentioned the internet a little earlier. I'm sure we Google his name, articles galore, videos galore of him popping up. We got the Register, we got the Times coming up. You have a website, correct?
Yes, Kurt Weston, KurtWeston.com.
So people can go and view your work there.
Right.
And make sure you guys go check out his work as well as all the blind artists. We also have another Orange County photographer being featured there as well at the California Museum of Photography in Riverside. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank
and
you,
your
Crystal.
Lovely doggy who
Ambrose.
is tired.
Yes.
Make sure you guys join us next time for another episode of Turning the Verge.
Thank you.